Zyra sat alone in the cold observatory tower on the dark side of Varela. The stars outside blinked softly, lighting up her blue face with tiny sparkles. She yawned and leaned back in her chair. Watching the radar screen, another boring night. Shift, no ships, no signals, just silence in space. She pulled her warm cloak tighter around her shoulders. Outside the glass dome, clouds of purple gas floated past the moons. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. She reached for her hot drink, but then a beep. A single sharp sound from the radar. Zyra froze. Her eyes jumped to the screen. A blinking had appeared, moving fast. Not a comet, not a cargo drone, not any known code. She tapped the controls quickly. Zooming in, the energy pattern was strange, strong, and old. Her heart began to race. She scanned through the database, but nothing matched. Then she remembered something: a banned archive, hidden deep in the system. She typed fast, opening the locked files her teachers had warned her never to touch. Her hands shook. Lines of old data loaded on screen. She saw the same pattern, the same speed, the same shape. Next to it was a word, one she had heard only in stories. Human. No, she whispered, that can't be. Her people believed humans were just legends, old stories told to scare children or entertain bored elders. Creatures from another world who had once touched the stars and vanished. Zyra never believed in them, but the signal on her screen, it was real. She opened the external camera and zoomed in toward the source. A small ship, damaged, drifting slowly near the asteroid field. Parts of it were on fire, but the core was still glowing with power. She tried to contact command, but no one answered. Everyone on Varela had gone to sleep. She left urgent messages, sent images, even flagged the highest alert code, but nothing happened. They ignored her or didn't believe her. She was just a student. After all, a girl with no voice. Zyra stood up, breathing fast. She had to see it herself. Had to know if the stories were true. She ran to the lower deck, grabbed her jacket, jumped into her scout pod. Unauthorized flight is forbidden, the AI said in a cold voice. I don't care, Zyra whispered. Override, with a loud hum. The engines lit up and the doors opened. Stars stretched around her as the small ship shot out into space. The damaged ship was less than 20 clicks away, but every second felt like a lifetime as she got closer. She could see it more clearly, the sharp angles, the metal surface scarred with burns, and strange letters written in a circle on the side. USSC Heron, it said. Zyra didn't know what it meant, but her gut told her this was not Virulon. This was not any species she knew. This was human. She docked slowly, heart thudding in her chest. The airlock hissed open and a warm, musty smell hit her nose. Inside was dark, blinking with red lights and emergency warnings. She held her small stun gun tight and moved through the halls. Everything was strange. The walls were lined with buttons and strange symbols. A photo floated by in zero gravity, showed a blue planet and people standing in front of a large ship, smiling. People with round faces, soft skin, no horns, humans. Then she heard it: a breath, a cough, a sound. She turned sharply and raised her weapon. There, behind a broken door, lay a figure. His body was big, stronger than she imagined, but he was bleeding, and pale, and unconscious. Zyra stood there, frozen. This was it. A real human, not a myth, not a story. He looked nothing like the monster tales told. He looked weak, and for some reason that made her heart ache. She stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Her weapon lowered. She knelt beside him and touched his skin. It was warm, still alive. The human moved a little and groaned. Zyra looked at the ceiling, breathing fast. If anyone found out, she would be punished, maybe even banished. But something deep inside her whispered, this is the truth, and truth must be seen. She looked at him one last time, then pulled out her medkit and began to treat his wounds. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. Her life was no longer normal. Zyra sat near the human, watching him carefully. His chest rose and fell slowly. She had wrapped his wounds and given him oxygen from her scout pod's reserve tank. Still, he was weak. She didn't know how much longer he could survive. The ship around them was dark, shaking slightly every few minutes. It was clear this ship was dying. She stood and moved through the strange halls again. Every wall was scratched, burned, or broken. Fire had eaten part of the corridor. The engines were silent. The control room was half melted. Zyra found a strange screen showing symbols she couldn't read. But she saw one word blinking red in Varellan translation, critical. She looked back toward the sleeping human. If she didn't take him away soon, they both might die. She rushed to her pod and checked the oxygen, fuel, and space. It was small, lonely, meant for one person, but maybe, if she removed some gear, she could make room for him. She began pulling out extra supplies, throwing them into the void of space. Food packs, scanners, data chips, setting thing not needed. Her heart was racing. Zyra knew what she was doing was a crime, helping a foreign species, hiding a forbidden life form, stealing medical supplies. But she couldn't stop now, not after seeing him. Not after feeling that strange pain in her chest when she saw his blood. She returned to him again as she leaned over to lift him. His eyes fluttered open. He gasped and flinched, trying to move. Away, Zyra raised her hands quickly. Easy, she said in Varellan. He didn't understand. But then, to her surprise, he spoke back. Don't hurt, he whispered in broken words. She froze. The way he spoke it was rough. Upped. The accent. It wasn't Varellan, but the roots of it were old Varellan dialect. A language long dead, erased from their schools and forbidden by the council. Zyra's breath caught in her throat. How could a human know that language? Who are you? She asked slowly. Carefully, he blinked at her, then coughed. Ethan, he said. Pilot, USSC Heron. Zyra didn't understand the name of the ship, but one thing was clear. He was not just any wanderer. He was part of something bigger, something human. Ethan looked at her face, confused and weak. You, not enemy, he whispered. You saved me. Zyra nodded slightly, unsure what to say. They stared at each other, both full of questions, both full of fear. Suddenly, the ship shook hard. Warning lights blinked red again. The system was failing. Zyra grabbed Ethan's arm. We have to go, she said firmly. He didn't understand all the words, but he saw the look in her eyes. He nodded weakly, with great effort. She helped him stand. He leaned on her, one arm over her shoulders. She pulled him down the corridor, toward the airlock. It took all her strength, but they reached her scout pod in time. The moment they closed the door, the human ship let out a deep groan. Flames burst from its side as it drifted deeper into the asteroid belt. Zyra's fingers flew over the controls. The pod lifted and turned away from the wreck. They were safe for now. Inside the pod, the air was tight. Ethan sat on the floor, eyes half closed, breathing slow. Zyra wrapped him in a heat blanket and gave him more oxygen. He reached out and touched her arm gently. Thank you, he said. Zyra didn't answer. She just stared at him. He was nothing like what the story said. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't evil. He was just a man, hurt, lost, and alone. And now he was her responsibility. Zyra set the ship on silent mode and hid behind one of the larger moons. She checked the radar again. No Varellan patrols nearby. She had a little time. Time to think, time to plan. But her mind was full of noise. How could this be real? Why did no one believe her when she reported the signal? And why did this human know her ancient language? Something was being hidden from her people, something big. Zyra looked at the sleeping man again. She knew this wasn't just about saving a life anymore. It was about discovering a truth buried for generations. Outside, the stars kept blinking, but inside, Zyra's heart beat louder than ever. This human was more than a stranger. He was a key. A link to a forgotten past, and maybe to a future no one had dared imagine. The silence inside the scout pod was deep and heavy. Ethan lay still, covered in a heat blanket, his chest rising slowly. Zyra sat near him, arms wrapped around her knees. She had questions too many, and no answers. Her mind played the moment. Again and again, the way he spoke, the words he used, old Virulon, not the new, clean versions spoken in the cities, but the kind only found in banned books, words her teachers refused to explain. She whispered the phrase he had said, Velon. Dorna, it meant I surrender with peace, a greeting used by ancient diplomats. How did a human know it? Why did he use it? Zyra checked the radar again. Still safe, still hidden, but she couldn't stay here forever. She had no plan, no backup, and no help. Just a dying man from a forgotten species. Suddenly, Ethan stirred. He opened his eyes slowly. Blinking at the dim light, Zyra leaned closer. Are you awake? She asked softly. He nodded slightly. His voice was dry, like sand, water, he croaked. She helped him drink slowly from a small metal cup. He coughed once, then leaned back again. You saved me, he whispered. Zyra didn't answer right away. She just stared at him. You spoke old Virulon, she said at last. Ethan looked confused. Old. What? She repeated the phrase he used. Ethan blinked, then smiled weakly. My grandmother taught me that, he said, she said. Once. Long ago, humans had friends in the stars. Zyra's eyes widened. She was right. He nodded slowly. There was a time, before the Great Silence, he whispered. We traveled together, shared worlds. Then something happened. What happened? Zyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan shook his head. No one knows. Earth was attacked. Records lost. I was born on a station. Zyra sat back, stunned. If what he said was true, then her people had once known humans, not as enemies, but as allies. She had to know more. Why were you in this part of space? She asked. Ethan took a breath. We're looking for something, he said. A message. A key. Zyra frowned. What kind of key? Ethan reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small black cube. It glowed faintly in the dim light. This, he said, is the only one we had left. He placed it in her hand. It felt warm, alive. She turned it over. Strange lines glowed across its surface. This is not human tech, she whispered. No, Ethan said. Your people made it. Long ago. Zyra's heart skipped a beat. Why do you have it? Because it points the way to the truth, he said. To a place your leaders don't want found. Zyra felt cold. Her people had hidden something, something powerful, something dangerous. Ethan coughed again, weak and tired. You don't have to help me, he said softly. I know it's risky. Zyra looked at him and said, I already did. She stood and walked to the control panel outside the pod window. The gas clouds shimmered like oil and water. I need to know the truth too, she said. For all my life, I believed humans were a lie. She turned to him, eyes sharp. But you're real, he smiled. Very real. They stayed quiet for a while. Zyra scanned the map, looking for a place to hide. There was one place, Evershade Moon, abandoned, filled with old mining tunnels. No one went there anymore, perfect to rest and plan their next move. She set the course. The pod engines hummed. To life, the stars stretched once again as they flew into the void. Ethan watched the stars from the floor. "I used to think this part of space was dead," he said. Zyra glanced down at him. "It is, unless you find someone," she said. He gave a tired smile. "Lucky me." Zyra looked at the cube again. The truth was out there, hidden, buried, forgotten. But no longer lost. And now, a girl who once thought humans were only myths was flying beside one toward the secrets her world had tried to erase. Asterisk Evershade Moon looked like a dead world. Its surface was dry and full of sharp black rocks. Dust storms moved slowly across the land. No cities, no lights, no signals, just silence. Zyra landed her scout pod near a broken mining tower. The metal structure stood tall but rusted long ago. This place was used to dig deep into the moon for rare crystals, but after the crystals ran out, the workers left. Now, only ghosts remained. She helped Ethan climb out of the pod. He was stronger now, but still weak. He leaned on her shoulder as they walked toward the tower. Inside, the air was stale, but safe. Old machines sat in corners. Covered in dust, Zyra found a bed frame, wiped it clean, and helped Ethan lie down. "Rest," she said. He gave her a small nod, then closed his eyes. Zyra sat on the floor, staring at the cube in her hand. It still glowed softly. She didn't know how it worked, but something inside her told her this was important. Very important. She opened her wrist communicator and connected to her personal archives. She began searching through history files. Most were government-proved records. Clean, simple, safe, but she knew those were lies. She hacked into a private network using old codes she learned from her uncle. There, she found old stories, hidden records, forbidden logs. And then she found a name, Taravel, her great-grandmother, a respected explorer and scientist. One file had a video log. Zyra tapped the screen and watched. An old alien woman appeared. Her skin was wrinkled. Her horns shorter than usual, but her eyes were bright. She sat in a dark room. Speaking softly, "I met them," the old woman said. "I met the humans." Zyra leaned closer. They were not monsters, not killers, not liars. Taravel continued. They were curious, kind, full of life. She paused. But the council didn't want peace. Zyra's breath caught. They feared human strength. Feared their ideas, the old woman said. So they erased the records, banned the language, and told us humans were a myth. Zyra's hand shook. Her own family had known the truth, and never told her. The log ended. Zyra sat still, silent. The cube in her hand seemed to glow brighter. She looked at Ethan, still sleeping. He was the living proof of everything her world had hidden. Later, Ethan woke up and sat beside her. She showed him the video log. He watched quietly when it ended. "He didn't speak for a long time. They did the same to us," he said finally. "They told us the Varellans betrayed us." Zyra looked at him with wide eyes. "So both our people were told lies," she said. He nodded. Two sides of the same broken coin. Zyra stood and walked to a wall panel. She pressed it, and a hidden door slid open with a hiss. She had seen something in the maps an old tunnel leading deeper into the moon. They needed answers, and the cube might lead them there. Ethan followed slowly, using a metal rod as a cane. They stepped into the darkness. Zyra held a light stick. In one hand, the walls were smooth, the tunnel old, but still strong. Strange marks lined the path symbols not seen in normal Virulent language, but Ethan paused and said, "I've seen these before." Zyra looked back. "Where?" "In old human ruins." "Drawings from before the war," he said. She blinked. "Our people left marks on your world?" "It seems so," he whispered. At the end of the tunnel, they reached a sealed door. Zyra held up the cube. It glowed brighter. Then, slowly, the door opened with a low hum. Inside was a chamber filled with glowing crystals. In the center, a round table stood with strange lights floating above it. Zyra and Ethan stepped closer. As soon as the cube touched the table, the lights formed. An image, a Virilan, and a human standing side by side. Smiling, a voice filled the room, old and full of power. "This is the Archive of Peace," it said. "You have found what was lost." Zyra felt tears in her eyes. All her life, she had been told to fear humans, but this chamber proved something different. Something beautiful. Ethan looked around. In awe, "This is history," he said. Zyra nodded. "No," she whispered. "This is the truth." And now she knew what they had to do. They had to share this truth, no matter the cost. The sky above Varela was quiet, but the command center was not, inside the tallest tower. Red lights flashed on the walls. Officers shouted into headsets, tapping fast on glowing screens. "Scout Pod 92 has been missing for 2 cycles. 1. Officer said, last known position, outer edge of the gas belt. Another replied quickly, "Send a tracking signal now." Commander Elrin stood at the center of the room, arms behind his back. His face was hard and serious, his silver armor shining under the lights. "She's just a student," he said. Zero wouldn't do this without a reason. A younger officer replied, "Sir, we have images from her radar station." The screen showed the human ship, the damaged, unknown vessel. Elrin's eyes narrowed. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yes, sir," the officer said. "And she went after it alone." Elrin turned slowly. "Then we are no longer dealing with a student," he said. "She has broken code, and possibly made contact, far away, on Evershade Moon." Zyra sat in the ancient archive room. The lights above the table continued to glow. The image of the Virilan and the human remained in the air. Ethan stood beside her, one hand resting on the table. He looked stronger now, but still walked with care. "This is everything," he said. "If your people see this, maybe it changes something." Zyra shook her head slowly. "Not everyone wants the truth," she said. "The council controls all knowledge. They'll try to stop us." Ethan looked her in the eyes. "So what do we do?" Zyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We show the people, not the leaders." They began copying the data, transferring the message from the archive into the cube, but as they worked, a soft beep echoed through Zyra's wrist communicator. Her heart skipped. She checked the signal. They had found her. "The pod has been tracked," she said quickly. "They're coming." Ethan grabbed the cube and put it in a small metal case. "Then we need to leave now," he said. They rushed back through the tunnel, out to the old mining tower. Zyra checked the Sky 3 VRL patrol ships were closing in fast. "There's no time to fly out," Ethan said. "We'll be shot down." Zyra thought quickly. "There's a cave system under the mines," she said. "Old, dangerous, but it may hide us." They grabbed emergency packs and disappeared into the mine tunnels just as the first patrol ship landed. VRL soldiers stepped out. Scanning the area with high-tech visors, one officer pointed at the scout pod. "Found it," he said. Another walked up to the door and opened it. Empty, inside the command ship above. Elrin watched from the sky. He pressed a button on his console. "Search every tunnel, every rock," he ordered. "Bring her back." Down in the mine tunnels, Zyra and Ethan moved carefully. Their boots crunched over old metal tracks and broken rocks. The light from Zyra's stick showed strange shadows on the walls. "Are you sure this way is safe?" Ethan asked. "No," she said honestly. "But it's all we've got." Suddenly, the ground shook. A loud sound echoed behind them. "Drills. They're coming," Ethan said. Zyra pulled him into a narrow side path. "There's a drop." "Shafts ahead," she said. "We can hide there." They slid down a long cable into the deep pit, landing in a chamber full of old machines. Zyra sealed the entrance behind them with a metal beam. "For now, They were safe. They sat in the dark. For a while, breathing hard. Ethan looked at the case in his hands. This little cube is making a lot of people angry. He said. Zira gave a tired laugh. It holds a truth no one wants to face. Suddenly, her communicator buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't. From the patrol, it was from someone unexpected, her uncle Zira. The voice whispered, "If you can hear me, listen carefully." Zira froze. "My name is on the report," he said. "They think I helped you. I didn't. But I will now go to the Black Wind sector. There's someone there who remembers the old ways." The message ended. Zira looked at Ethan. "We're not alone," she said. "There are others who remember." Ethan smiled weakly. Then, "There's still hope." They both knew the road ahead would be harder. They were being hunted, surrounded, betrayed by their own kind. But now they had something powerful, the truth, and the courage to carry it. Asterisk, the ship Zira's uncle mentioned was old and hidden deep inside the Blackwind sector. It didn't have a name, just a code station 7X, long ago. It was used as a listening post during the early space wars. Now it floated in a forgotten corner of space, cold, broken, and full of secrets. Zira and Ethan had made their way through old tunnels, stolen a patrol drone, and reprogrammed it to reach this place. Every move they made was dangerous. Every breath felt borrowed, but they had no choice. They were running out of time. The cube sat between them as they approached the station. Still, glowing faintly, still holding the truth as they entered the docking port. Zero felt a strange weight in her chest. This place was different. Quiet, but not empty. Ethan touched the wall. His fingers brushed over old paint and burn marks. "This place has seen war," he said. Zira nodded. "Yes. But maybe it remembers peace, too." Inside, the halls were wide and dark. Long power cables ran like snakes across the floor. Old signs pointed toward different wings. Command, Adbay, Archive. They followed the path to the archive room. The cube glowing brighter with every step. The doors were sealed shut. Zira placed the cube against the panel. A soft pulse of light spread across the metal, then, with a hiss, the doors slid open. The room inside was round and filled with memory. Crystals floating in midair, hundreds of them, each glowing with soft color. They hovered in silence, waiting to be heard. Ethan stepped forward and looked around. This is history," he whispered. Zira nodded. But most of it was locked away. At the center of the room stood a tall pillar with an old control pad. Zira placed the cube into the slot. The crystals above began to spin slowly. A voice filled the air, calm and old. "Welcome to the United Archive of Varellan Human Accord." It said. Zira's eyes widened. She didn't know such a name ever existed. The voice continued, "Please select a memory." Ethan looked at her. "Let's find out what they wanted to hide." Zira tapped the controls, and a large crystal floated down. It spun faster, and then light filled the room. A recording began. 2 people stood on a stage. One was Varellan, tall with silver robes. The other was human, wearing a dark blue uniform. They spoke together. "Our people fought in the dark for too long," said the Varellan. "But together, we found light," said the human. The crowd around them clapped and cheered. "This is the alliance of peace," they said. "Not just for us, but for all the stars." Zira felt tears in her eyes. So many lies, so many years lost. Ethan stood silently, watching every second. This changes everything," he whispered. Zira nodded slowly. "We have to take this to the people." But then an alarm blared through the station. "Unauthorized presence detected," the voice said. Zira rushed to the console. "They've found us again," she said. Ethan grabbed the cube. "We have to get out of here." But before they could leave, a secret door opened near the back of the archive room. A figure stood there, cloaked in shadows. An old virulent woman with glowing eyes. Zyra froze. The woman stepped forward. "You carry something dangerous," she said. Zyra raised her chin. "We carry the truth." The woman studied her for a moment. Then she said, "Good." And she opened her hand, revealing another cube. "I have kept this hidden for over 100 years, she said. "It matches yours." Ethan stepped closer. "Who are you?" "I was once called Mirai," she said. "I was a friend of humans. Before your kind disappeared," she placed her cube beside theirs. The two cubes merged, glowing brighter. The archive responded immediately. New files unlocked. New crystals lit up. The room came alive with history. Images, voices, songs, and laughter. It was a full record of the Alliance proof of unity. Zyra stared in awe. "Why didn't you show this to the world?" "Because they would have killed me," Mirai said, "and burned it all again." Ethan looked at Zyra. "But now, they'll have to see it." Zyra nodded. "We'll broadcast it everywhere." Mirai handed them a small transmitter. "This will send your message across all public channels," she said. "But once you send it, there's no going back." Zyra looked at Ethan. He gave a slow nod. "We're ready," he said. Zyra held the transmitter tightly. Her heart beat like thunder. The truth was no longer hidden. It was ready to fly into the stars. Zyra stood in the heart of Station 7X. The merged cubes glowing like a tiny sun between her and Ethan. Mirai watched from the shadows. Her old eyes bright with hope. "Once we press send, every screen on Virella will light up," Mirai said. Zyra nodded, pressed the transmitter. A soft click. Data burst upward. Racing through satellites and towers, in breaths, homes, schools, and barracks showed the same lost recording. A Virulon and a human side by side, speaking of alliance and peace in the command tower. Commander Elrin froze before the sudden broadcast. Officers murmured. Shock spreading. Elrin remembered whispers from his grandmother. Tales the council called lies. He knew Zyra was telling the truth. Counselor Vares barked over the link. "Shut that signal down." Elrin stared at the bright faces on the screen. "No more lies," he said, and cut the link. A fleet of council warships jumped into the Blackwind sector, dark hulls blotting the stars. Zyra felt the deck tremble. "They will wipe the station," Ethan warned. "Not today," Zyra answered, launching the station's forgotten defense drones. The small guardians fanned out, forming a silver wall. Vares appeared. "Surrender the human and the data," he growled. "The data is already public." Zyra replied, "Fire, and everyone will see your fear." Varys's face twisted. "Weapons?" Charged, the drones met the first volley, sparks lighting space on Virella. People filled streets and markets, Hallas hovering overhead. They watched both the Ancient Alliance video and the live battle feed. Children asked why leaders wanted to. Silence, hope. Elders whispered old words they had hidden for years. Elrin opened a planet-wide channel. "Citizens, the Council hid our past. Humans were allies, not enemies." Across the fleet, captains hesitated. Pilots lowered guns. A few swung their ships to shield Station 7X. Only Varys's flagship kept weapons hot, aiming its cannon. Ethan limped to Zyra. "Our drones are nearly gone." "Then we use the station itself," Zyra said. Diverting core power into a single pulse, it washed over the flagship, blinding sensors. Quenching the cannon, inside, Vares staggered as alarms wailed. Screens around him still looped the smiling Alliance founders. His fury melted into silence. A hush fell through space, one by one. Warships dimmed their guns. Stars shone bright again. Zyra sagged against the console. Ethan steadied her. Mirai touched their shoulders. "The truth lives," she whispered. Zyra opened one last channel, her voice soft but clear. "I was taught to fear a myth, but today I found family. Let this be the first dawn of shared stars. Cheers. Rose from deserts, oceans, and orbiting farms. Humans in hidden stations answered with joyful signals. Elrin smiled and ordered, "All ships, stand down. Send aid to Station 7X. Prepare for peace talks." Hours later, shuttles circled the station. Doctors tended Ethan. Engineers reinforced old hulls. Reporters streamed interviews with Zyra and Mirai. Families gathered around city halls. Old veterans saluted. Miners paused drills to listen. A world once divided breathed together. Mirai guided Zyra and Ethan to a balcony over the archive core. A column of light from the cubes rose like a quiet aurora. "The cubes are beacons," Mirai said. "Real peace is built by living hands." Zyra nodded. "Feeling the weight and the promise, my hands are ready," she answered. Ethan squeezed her shoulder. "And you are not alone," he said. Commander Elrin arrived, dressed in a plain flight jacket. He bowed. "You showed us our reflection." She bowed back. "Help me keep it bright," she said. Elrin led her to a holly podium. Cameras hovered. Zyra took a breath and spoke to the galaxy. "I am Zyra, daughter of Virella. Friend of Earth," she said. "Our past was stolen. Our future we reclaim together." Applause rolled across continents and moons. Signals bounced further, reaching forgotten human refuges on asteroid colonies. Families there saw Zyra's face and wept. Believing themselves lost to history on the ice moon of Talaris, young cadets vowed to wear both emblems on their uniforms. For the first time in generations, two scattered civilizations felt the same heartbeat. That night, Zyra stood by a window. Looking at the endless dark, Ethan, arm in a sling, joined her. "You defied the stars," he said. She smiled softly. "No, I listened to them. They always sang of unity. We forgot the tune." "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild," she said. "Together, outside, to flags one Virellon." One human rose on a shared mast. Under them, new letters glowed. United Archive of the New Alliance. Zyra watched sparks fly as workers fixed the station. She had risked everything and gained tomorrow. A girl once alone in a silent observatory had awakened a galaxy. And the stars, endless and bright, seemed to thrum with welcome.